In this video, I'm going to show you how to flourish a simple bird, and this is based on this book, Ornate Pictorial Calligraphy by Lufer, as well as my own interpretations. I'm going to start with pencil to explain how to form the bird, and then I'll show you with ink on a pointed pen. So the first thing we're going to do is make the wings. The wings are going to be formed by a long, graceful S curve, and the first one's going to start towards the top in the middle. I'm going to start around this point. And I'm going to aim for, it's going to be a slanted line that comes in this direction. So I'm going to be aiming for that, a point over here, and making a long S curve that's not too curved. Then I'm going to start the second wing to the left and down just a little bit from where we started the first one. So maybe around this point, and aim for about the same spot. To close off this bottom wing, it's going to end up finishing below this point around here with a curve that's in the opposite direction of the top of the wing. So the curve is going to go in this direction, and it's going to meet up with the wing around here. To close this wing, I'm just going to do some little feather lines. For the head, it's going to come out over here, and the neck is going to start between the two wings. It's going to come out with a line that curves upward, and then the top of the head will be right there. Next, we're going to make the beak, which is going to be pointing kind of upward with a slightly curved line. And then we're going to come back in with a curve in the same direction. This is actually a slight S curve. I'm going to follow it with a thin line coming up, and then a really thin line coming back down. Next, the neck, the bottom part of the neck, is going to connect with the belly, which is going to be parallel to the bottom curve of the wing. Like that. So this line right here, this first portion, is pretty straight. You don't want to make it too curved. The eye is going to be in the same direction as the head, so like along this axis. And it's going to be about halfway between the top and the bottom, and start a little bit in front of where the mouth of the beak ends, so around here. We're going to make a C curve that kind of tapers off, so actually that ends up being like an S curve, and the shading is going to go on this portion. Then we're going to make a parallel line following that is thin with a very small gap in between, and then a C curve on the other side. That was a little bit too big. C curve on this side with a small circle shape in the back, and then fill in the front. And then you can add a little line below with just some small lines next to it. You can also do a couple small lines up here towards the top of the beak. Next, we're going to make the tail feathers. So the tail feathers, you want the longest one to be at least the same length as the body of the bird. So right now the body is this wide, the tail feathers are going to come out, and you want it to be at least the length of the bird. And they're going to start behind the back of this wing, and they're going to start between like this range, here and here. The longest one is going to be in the middle, so I'm just going to start with the first one in between those two dots. And the curve, you want it to, I think about this as being like a really big compound curve in this direction, where the body is the curve in this direction, and then the tail feathers are going to curve in the opposite direction. Again, we're going to aim to make it at least as long as the body itself. So the first curve, you want to actually make the first part of it kind of straight and then curve off at the end. So it's going to go like in this arc direction, start kind of straight and then curve at the end. So that's the longest one. I'm actually going to turn my paper, and you can draw it in this direction. On either side, we're going to add shorter curves that start along the same line, but they're going to gradually be getting shorter. Again, you want to start kind of straight and then curve off. Here, I'm just going to make a few short ones to connect it back to the body. On the left side of this longest tail feather, I'm also going to make some shorter ones that come straight and then curve in the same direction, but they're gradually getting shorter. And that is the basic way to make the bird. So we just made the bird in pencil. Now I'm going to show you how to do it in ink. I'm going to be using an oblique holder for this and just some black Sumi ink. If you would like to use a straight holder, you can do that. So a straight holder is commonly used for offhand flourishing. Typically you would make the flourishes away from you if you're using a straight holder, but I'm just going to use an oblique holder for this one and show you where to put the shading on the bird. So we'll do the same steps in the same order. You don't have to do it in this order. This is just how I usually find it easiest. Start with the first wing, which begins in the middle towards the top and comes down with an S curve. Start with a gradual curve and then add some shading right here as you finish the curve. Then start to the left a little bit down from where you started the first one and aim for about the same spot. I'm turning my paper here and you'll see that I will be turning it a lot as we're doing this. Next is the head, and remember the head comes out this way. I think I might have drawn the bottom of the wing first. I can't remember. You can do it in any order that makes sense to you. But the head is going to come out this way. I'm actually going to start here and make the curve coming down and end in the middle of the wing. So I'm picturing that it's coming up and curving this way. So I'm going to start around here and add a little bit of shading for the curve of the top of the head right there. Finish with the neck. The beak comes straight up with a slight curve and then comes back in with a slight S curve and a little bit of shading there, followed by a thin line up and a thin line down. So at this point I'm going to now make the bottom of this wing. It's going to ending around here, and the bottom curve is going to follow the opposite of the top. So it'll start here, curve down, and come this way. I'm actually going to start it here because of the direction that I want the shade to go. So starting with a space between here and here, and then ending at the wing. Also, I'm just going to close off this wing with some feathers. Now the neck of the bird is going to come down and then end up being kind of parallel with the base of the wing. For the eye, remember it's going to start between the top of the head and the bottom of the head, and it's going to be in the same orientation or the same direction. So I'm turning my paper this way, and I'm going to start it a little bit in front of where the mouth ends, so about here. And it's going to start with a shaded C curve that comes this way, but then finishes with a slight curve in that direction. Trace a thin line here and then draw a curve on the other side. I'm going to do like the outline of a circle and then fill this in. I think this eye was a little too big. And add just a couple little lines around it as well as right there. Okay, now for the tail feathers. So again, we're going to start them behind the wing. You want to start them not too low. They're going to be like in this range. And I'm turning my paper here, so it's going to follow the opposite of this curve, starting here, so they're going to go in this direction. I'm going to make it go all the way towards almost the edge of my paper. So my feathers are going to range from about here to here, so I'll start somewhere in the middle and make the shaded line. Remember, it's going to start kind of straight and then go into a curve. That. So that's establishing kind of the shape of the tail, but then on either side you can add more feathers that are curving and gradually get shorter. The amount of curvature is up to you. You can make these really straight or really curved. You can also make them a lot longer if you have more room. There's lots of different variables that you can experiment with in a bird. You can also add even more lines in between. You could add some thin lines between these thick ones. You could add some more short lines coming off the end of this wing. You can even add in the mouth. Sometimes if I want to add just a little bit of extra decoration, or if I don't love the way the beak looks, a way to get around that is to add something that it's holding. So start with an S curve like that, and then if we imagine that this is like a leaf branch, just add some little tick marks to it. And now it looks like it's carrying something. Okay, so that is the basic way to do a bird in this direction using an oblique holder.